72 seasons proved that Metallica is bad. At choosing the singles. Hi friends, it's Andriy Vasylenko. Gotcha! In fact, actually, I thought that my review of this album would be like this. I would say that Metallica is done and all based on the first couple singles. The middle two, actually, they ruined all my expectations. I just prepared for worth. And then the 72 seasons single released, and I was like, maybe they are actually choosing the wrong songs as singles. And so I decided just to wait for the whole package, for the whole record, for the whole 11th Metallica album, 72 seasons. It contains 12 songs, 8 of which we did not hear before the release, and pretty much any of those could have gone as singles, instead of Screaming Suicide and If Darkness Had a Song. And so yeah, as you see, I'm quite uplifted, quite illuminated, I'm in lux and everything light. Light is the theme of the album. Not the theme, but the actual kind of the metaphor and everything. Because we have at least 2 songs which evolve around different meanings of light. One of which is about the light which is eternal, and the other one is about the light that there's no light. That's what James is yelling at the beginning of the song. There's no light! Without darkness. And darkness is another theme of the song, couple songs mention it. So yeah, this is the kind of spirit, vibe about this album, light, darkness. Actual subject is the growing up, 72 seasons, 18 years of the person's life. Let's do it. Let's dive into this album and what I thought would be on it, but I was wrong, and where I was right, actually. And regarding the title, 72 seasons, it turned out that it could have been named Lux Eterna. James wanted it that way, but he was outvoted. But it also sounds like a cool name for the record. But I guess the fans have already come up with their version of the title. The Yellow Album, referring to the color of the artwork, which is yellow, which is similar to the Black Album, which is officially called Metallica, but no one ever calls it like that. It's just the Black Album, and 72 seasons can follow that path too. But I believe in this case we can have 2 separate applications for either the title, 72 seasons and the Yellow Album. 72 seasons is when you listen to the album without actually listening to Kirk Hammett, but when you do listen to what he's doing there, that's Yellow Album. And actually, upon listening to this album, I came up with my formula, my criteria on how to see if a guitar solo is good. So a guitar solo is great when even a bassist has the urge to play it on bass. It's all about melodies, and they are absent on Kirk's solos on this album. And they were also absent on Hardwired. But actually, in this regard, I see the downtrend. On Hardwired, we had at least one moment, one memorable lick out of all Kirk Hammett lead parts from Spit Out the Bone. On this one, none. And this marks the end of my complaining and criticizing the album. The rest is actually something good to say about it. Otherwise, I will go down in history like the guy who shits on Metallica because, who knows, maybe that's the last album. But I genuinely, honestly, have something good to say about pretty much everything else outside of Kirk Hammett solos. So let's dive in and let's start with the geeky stuff that you are here, hopefully subscribed for all these years. And let me congratulate you all. Metallica wrote the longest original song ever, Inamorata. And that's without question the longest one, because previously the contenders were like, does it count or does it not? Previously the longest song was The Outlaw Torn, 9:58, but it actually was longer, almost 11 minutes, but I had to cut it, otherwise it would not fit within the CD. But the other contender was The Merciful Fate from Garage Inc., which was 11:10. But it's not an original song, that's the cover, not just a cover, a compilation, a medley of different songs. And now we finally have the original Metallica song, which is actually the exact same length with Merciful Fate medley. But at least it beats The Outlaw Torn, either in shortened or not shortened version. This is the closing track of the whole album and the part 2, the CD B in particular. And it's quite funny to see that the part 1, the CD A, is closing by the shortest song on the record and one of the shortest Metallica songs ever, Lux Eterna, 3:22. And it would have been even better if it actually was the shortest one ever. And that would have added up some points to the lore of Metallica about this album. Because Metallica lore is a big part of the legacy. It's not just about the songs and the riffs, but just these geeky details I've built my entire channel around. And there's a couple more things on this album that Metallica rarely did. Namely, it has the second ever Metallica song which starts with vocals. It's Chasing Light. and the other one, you guessed it, is Fuel. Second time in an original song they used a question mark, Too Far Gone. Before it was on the previous album, Am I Savage? Plus, let's not forget about Am I Evil, but we're talking about original stuff. Moreover, I guess it's the first time they use an exclamation mark in their song, which is You Must Burn. 72 Seasons, the title track, it is long, which is in the best traditions of Metallica from the 80s. And the last time they actually did the long title track was on Saint Anger, and it was the last time they did it on the second place of the setlist. And 72 Seasons, just like Hardwired, is opening with the title track. Hardwired was the short one, this one is the long one. And let that be our segue into comparison of Hardwired and 72 Seasons. Because obviously they sound very similar. Both are 12-song records made as double albums. And I'm pretty sure you can pick songs from both albums and make one the best album, like Seasons Hardwired, and you would not even feel much difference because they sound really close. They found the formula of production, and Greg Fidelman is probably the guy to thank it for or blame for if you don't like the sound. I actually do. And besides the title tracks, the 12 double album and sound, what are the similarities between these two records? Firstly, something that I am a bit bitter about, I'm sad about, which is there's no ballad on either of this album and no instrumental. And I don't know why. Actually, it sounded like Metallica would have written something like this because ballads are easy, they are not that fast for Lars to endure. An instrumental would be fun also for James because this is a song he doesn't have to sing for. And you know that I'm a big fan of arpeggios, bass solos and everything, and that's where the ballad and instrumental would have been good for. But looks like on Hardwired they did not feel like making them, and the same happened on 72 Seasons. For what reason, I don't know. Could that be that Metallica deliberately tries to make something not like the old way and explore new ways of making the set list and everything? Like making the number 4 ballad is so predictable, and instrumental is too much of a risk to take because we have 4 compositions to be compared to, and those 4 may be unbeatable, even Suicide and Redemption, which is a masterpiece to me. And that were my actual predictions, wishes. A ballad and instrumental, and maybe an instrumental which is evolving around bass, like more bass than ever, only Anesthesia had more, to finally give Robert some spot to shine, to just go all out. Because he's really prolific bassist, and he's really underutilized in Metallica, and maybe an instrumental of this new kind, to not repeat the formulas of Ryan Tool with slap and everything, but that did not happen. And actually, other aspects of the album kind of make up for the lack of classic elements, because they actually doubled down on other classic elements, namely speed. And that's where 72 Seasons just beats the shit out Hardwired. And I've got data to prove it. So I figured out the tempos, BPMs for each of the songs, and compared it to the tempos on Hardwired. Just by having a quick look at them, it's obvious. The latest album is faster. And 2 songs kinda prove it even more. It's the 2 ones with a double tempo, one in parentheses. It's Screaming Suicide and Lux Eterna. Because it depends on how you look at it. Lux Eterna is 131, which is better to transcribed with the notation, but in fact, it's going at double time, 262 BPM. And that actually helped me realize how to distinguish heavy metal from speed metal. If a song has ambiguous tempo, should you notate it in double time or half time? Because it's bordering, like in that ambiguous gray area. It's actually in 200s BPM, but it sounds slower than thrash because of rhythm. Say, if you take Ace of Spades, it's around 140 BPM. But so is Symphony of Destruction, but it's obvious which is faster. That's speed metal for you. And Screaming Suicide and Lux Eterna are speed metal, which is not present on Hardwired. The average tempo of 72 Seasons is, if to count it double times, 160. But if to count those 2 songs with half time, it's still 140. And the mean tempo, Hardwired, is 137. So whichever method you use to calculate the tempos for 72 Seasons, it's still faster than Hardwired. But at the same time, 72 Seasons does not have the extreme songs, like very prominent thrashers. The fastest song on the record is about 193 BPM. But it does not feel like that, because if you compare it to Blackened or even My Apocalypse, Too Far Gone falls short in that regard. Like, it's not deserving the tempo it's in. But the actual fastest song on the record, considering tempo, rhythm, and feel, I guess it's Room of Mirrors. Maybe because there's a lot of double bass there, which adds to the vibe that's something fast. And it's just 160. So it depends how much of the song you play at fucking 6th gear. But we actually have like half of the record in that kind of territory. 72 Seasons, and Shadow Follows, and Chasing Lights. Man, how can you blame Metallica of becoming pop or lazy if you have songs like that which don't stop at all, basically? But at the same time, there's no extreme slow ones. Like, there was one or two on Hardwired, Am I Savage, and Dream No More. We have similar tempos on 72 Seasons, but there's no that doom sludge vibe there as much as there is on Hardwired. And the slowest one on this record is You Must Burn, 87 BPM, which is around like Harvester of Sorrow and God Failed, but the extreme turtle is not present here. Because, speed is not the criteria, the excuse to tell that's good, the faster the better. It all depends on if it fits or not, if it delivers something or not. And if you say, what's the point of comparing the albums? Just listen to it on its own, like a standalone piece of music, and forget about the entire Metallica back catalog. But man, that's not how it works. You will always have this mental, subconscious comparison to the previous album, because you fall in love with the band for something, and there's always this comparison around. And the last album was like the previous station from which you departed and came here, and just, it's unavoidable, it's natural. So I don't share that opinion. Just think about it outside of everything. And I came across some comments, I guess, on my Instagram. By the way, subscribe, follow there. The 72 Seasons could be one of the best albums to introduce new fans to Metallica. It sounds modern and kind of comprises the best from the previous Metallica eras. It could be that case if there's only one thing different. I don't want new people take it as kind of gold standard. Whoa, that's how you should write the songs, and that's how you should write the solos. No, people, if that's your first album, no, that's not how you should approach the lead part in the song. For that, go to the Black Album, to the 80s. That's the reference for you. Kirk did that, and we should not forget that Kirk was capable, maybe is capable of doing that. It's just his current state. And just acknowledge, pay tribute to what he's done. You may not necessarily like what he's doing now, like I don't. I actually hate these solos. But man, Kirk is Kirk. And we at least should be grateful that he brought some cool riffs for this album. Yeah, that's another difference from Hardwired. It's not just Hetfield plus Ulrich record. We have multiple contributions by Robert and Hammett. And should I remind you why Hardwired was deprived of any Kirk Hammett riffs, even though he often wrote riffs for Metallica? Was it true or not that it was about iPhone? But the fact is, there's not a single riff on the Hardwired songs. And riffs are the bricks, the actual claims for the contribution to songwriting. If you write a bass part based on riffs or solos based on riffs, it does not count. You need to bring the building parts of the compositions, which to Metallica is riffs. Is it fair? Not always, because remember, say, Ride the Lightning does not have a riff from Kirk Hammett, but it has a solo which actually defines the song. But he does not get any royalties from it, because he's not a contributor, he's not a co-writer officially. And there was only one contribution by Robert on Hardwired, which was the intro for Mankind. And on 72 Seasons, we have different situation, at least 3 by each. Let me see, actually. Kirk Hammett co-wrote the title track, Crown of Barbed Wire, Chasing Light, and If Darkness Had a Song. And Trujillo co-wrote Screaming Suicide, Sleepwalk My Life Away, and You Must Burn. So yeah, 4 by Kirk and 3 by Rob. Man, that's over a half album, not just Ulrich and James. And let's try to figure out which riffs belong to who, because a Metallica song contains multiple riffs, and let's see. Let's start with Kirk. Crown of Barbed Wire. And that's obvious which one, if you actually follow Metallica, not just for music, but all their backstage videos. It came from a tuning room riff, which I pretty much sure has some fan name from 2017 or something. They jammed around it and actually built some kind of rock composition, which turned into a full actual song for the album Crown of Barbed Wire. And it's pretty weird and distinct, just a cool contrast to all the judge by mostly James. But maybe one of that judge was by Hammett too, and I mean the title track. And today Metallica released a video on Instagram where each of the members has a few words about each of the songs. And regarding the title track, Robert says it has Kirk all over it. Maybe the main riff belongs to him too, but it sounds too James Hetfield-y. It sounds similar to Hardwired, and also I guess it is his, but maybe that's Kirk too. They boil in the same kind of kitchen, so they could write similar riffs. If Darkness had a song, I guess that's the main riff. It's also pretty weird as for James Hetfield's writing, but it could be any of the licks. The middle section also sounds pretty much that what Kirk could have written. Well, write in the comments, by the way. Maybe you have some snippets from interviews when they mentioned it. And the last one with Kirk is Chasing Light. Man, what a great song actually, but I don't remember riffs from there. I need to give it a couple more listens, and that's the album. Yeah, similar to Load and Reload when you just in Saint Anger, like you hear a riff and you forget from which exactly song it is. And I still can mix up riff from Load and Reload and Saint Anger. From 100 videos about Metallica, I still can do it. Is that good or bad when you cannot distinguish one song from another? And now the contributions by Robert. I remind you that Death Magnetic, which was the first actual album with Robert's playing, has a lot of his writing. And I actually still don't know which exactly lyrics he wrote because the songwriting credits are there just full band. But we definitely know. The Then It Never Comes, The main riff from Suicide Redemption, which was written in Peru, Lima. The flamenco riff from All Nightmare Long. And we are left with 7 songs, which we don't know what actually Robert wrote there. Hardwired was 1 intro and now 3. Sleepwalk My Life Away, obvious which part it is. The bass intro, I was actually blown away when it started. Is that Metallica? In general, the album brought me some Audioslave, Soundgarden vibes. 72 Seasons is basically a mix of Load Reload and Kill 'Em All, with no in-betweens. Like Kill 'Em All did not have a ballad, and it had some fast tempos, and Load Reload had this laid-back, bluesy licks. The vocal performance is also referring to that era, the mid-90s. And you would think that mixing Load and Kill 'Em All would make you a Black Album. No. There's something similar to the Black Album. Up to me, it's a brand new sound for Metallica, which they adhere to for 2 records in a row. And if it helps them stay afloat and keep going and kick ass, why should we complain if we have a couple more albums like that? But if only a ballad instrumental. The intro from Sleepwalk My Life Away is it's unusual lick for Metallica. It's very funky, and that's where Robert is actually the biggest professional at. And I wonder when Metallica finally allows Rob showcase that part of him. Because I'm sure there's a lot of funk within him, and this one at least partially captures that. And James in that Instagram video also said that the intro, the bass intro, is the favorite part of the song for him. And that's actually all he had to say about it. He did not like the song much, apparently. Then You Must Burn has some Trujillo too. And James also says that the main riff is based on the bass part. So I guess that's it. And Screaming Suicide. I actually don't know. Nothing of it sounds like Trujillo. So I guess you should help me in the comments which part of the screaming he wrote. In regards of main riffs, which are one of the special criteria in judging Metallica songs, they always try to find one lick which would lead it, and just everything just adds up. That's the main riff for you, and it usually comes right after the intro. Sometimes it is the intro, sometimes it's the verse, but usually it's the bridge, and there's no 5-star riff. And another part in which is different from Hardwired is that on Hardwired I had at least 3 riffs that were 5 out of 5. I was just completely amazed by them, which is the main riff from Spit Out the Bone, the middle section, and the breakdown from Am I Savage. Oh my god, what the legs those are. And when it comes to 72 Seasons, I don't have any of that, including the main riffs. They're evenly like 4 out of 5. Except maybe Sleepwalk My Life Away has the worst main riff. Which is weird because the verses and the breakdown, whatever was that, are really kicking ass. And actually, I can tell which is my favorite main riff. It is Shadow Follow. This is the closest to 5 out of 5 that I got on this album. Maybe it sounds too straightforward to some, but it catches me in some weird regard. Maybe it's the whole groove, but everything else falls kinda in the middle. The worst, the best, and everything in the same kinda dimension. With a couple maybe honorable mentions. For example, If Darkness Had a Song had a great main riff, but composition is not as great. One song I have to say a couple words of. And this is the closing track. And this is something that I was hyped about, and I had a wrong impression of it because I thought, based on the interviews, it's gonna be something ambient, something like 11 minutes. It has to be something slow and dragging and atmosphere and everything. But it turned out to be a pretty much normal Metallica song, just long. It did not feel long, which is good. Which means that composition did its work. And from interviews, we know it had some similarity, inspiration from Black Sabbath. And I expected that inspiration. But not an almost straight up ripoff. Man, the riff is apparently just Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, almost note for note. So yeah, you can add one more lick to the collection of the riffs Metallica stole. And still, I would not rank it low in our list of main riffs, because it still works. It's still kicking ass and it's Black Sabbath. How should I downgrade Black Sabbath even if it's kind of ripoff? And at least for one aspect of it, I should give it a couple more points. For once, we don't have power chords in the riff. It has some triads or something, which gives it a unique, not boring sound. The interlude has some bass, something in the background, something boom, 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 boom. But we don't have Trujillo's credit here, so it's just laid on the guitar work. But as Jim said, this was the song that just begged to be the last one, the closing track, to wrap up the record. And he also said that in particular, he liked how the song ended, the outro riff, which is also my favorite. Maybe my favorite on the entire album. It's not fast, it's not complicated and sophisticated. Nonetheless, it stays in my mind. On the other hand, we have a lot of riffs similar to that in terms of pace and chug, but they don't succeed in delivering what the outro riff from Inamorata does. That's the magic of a riff. And a couple songs I actually want to point out. Room of Mirrors has an outstanding harmony section. And Chasing Life has the most catchiest chorus of Metallica probably for the 20 years. And the rest, probably I missed something. Sure, I did. The greatest part of the album is, of course, James's vocals. I don't know how he's doing it. He's actually reaching a new peak of his voice. He's discovering new ways of singing, not to damage his throat and just to give it all away. 100%, hitting really high notes. Maybe the album did not have enough of his low timbre, his famous baritone. But in general, how can you not enjoy James's singing here? So, my conclusion. I don't have a conclusion. Just enjoy the fucking record. The points I told in the previous videos about the singles still valid, but now we have the whole package. And we have the whole picture. We have the whole story of Metallica. Thank you, Metallica, for your work, but half of the singles were not the best choices. But man, at least we have a lot of songs to make up for that. And thankfully, Metallica are now releasing some interviews right away to show you the inside of the album, who wrote which riff and everything, which is always welcome, especially in the Metallica Geek community. And sure, I forgot some points, some nuances that I'll probably more videos about for my second channel, probably. Go to Metallica shows if you can. I cannot, but at least my vinyl is on its way. And finally, that the only vinyl I have by Metallica is the Black Album, and now it's the Yellow Album. Write what you think about all of this in the comments. And thank you for support, and see you next time, friends.